as your lead pastor, one of the hats that I wear. And in Michigan, they always wear hats at this time of year because it is cold. And yet I realize we all wear hats, and here I'm lead pastor hat. In Michigan, I wear my dad's hat to my wonderful 31-year-old daughter. Father-in-law hat to my 33-year-old son-in-law who just had a birthday. Friend hat, brother hat. We all wear hats. And yet one of the ones I wear all the time, even though I'm here, is the hat of, you guessed it, Papa. And so I had a couple weeks there with my grandsons, and let's obviously show you a couple pictures. And so here they are, the first one, sitting. I can't believe how quiet, or just they're sitting. It's just a reminder that miracles happen for two young boys. The next that's Roman Juno, that's his middle name, Juno, yay. Anyway, he loves these eggs, I think that's what they are. Some of the toys he got, he is very excited about them. The next we have, that's his brother, that's Ezra, taking a nap on Mommy. It was a long Christmas day, and he needed a nap badly, like most of you with kids or grandkids realize they need, and that's the only way he'd go to sleep. So they both slept. And then finally, my daughter snapped this picture or video. There I am. Folks, those are the same clothes I wore Christmas Eve, because I got on the plane, thank the Lord, I had a first-class bump, flew, then we drove 2 hours, and we drove again. Anyway, so that's me taking a nap. Some question, no, was that me watching Ryan's sermon last week? And no, that wasn't. And the very good news is that even though most of us have put Christmas away, we put Jesus back in the box. That's a horrible analogy, but some people think that. I still got an upgrade on the way home Thursday night to first class. So I was thrilled. I thought I was about ready to meet Jesus. Coming in, I'm not going to pick on Karen, who's taking some pictures here. She also flew in. She's our worship director's wife. She flew in on Wednesday. They had to attempt 3 times to land the plane. Thankfully, mine just took one, but about 10 minutes out, that it must have dropped. All I know is I was, going through my sermon, trying not to say anything weird. I put my sermon away thinking if I hit the delete button, you're all in big trouble today. Water slid across everything, and it was rough. And I says, I'm not ready to meet my wife yet. But I thought, who do I call? Will my call even go through? What do I say to anybody? But it was probably just 30 seconds, but it was a long 30 seconds. So I am very much happy to be here and to be able to worship together as God's people. And again, I say it every time I go away, I am thrilled with technology, that I can watch this service and be a part of us, even though I am across the country. And so I was watching the service last week, and I heard something going on, wasn't quite sure. Wasn't sure was Pastor Ricky giving Ryan some challenge or something. And then all of a sudden it got louder, and I could see our security people coming through on the camera. And again, let me say that I am very proud of our team. Trust me, I'm in Michigan praying like crazy, saying, Lord, help Ryan to keep it together. Lord, help him to pick up his sermon where he left off. Lord, keep everybody safe. Because all I could see was Ryan, but nothing else until I saw the heads of the security people that I knew coming up. So again, I am very proud of our team and the way they handled things. I heard Tina was up here trying to do something, and if you ever ran into Tina, she could be our whole security team. You don't mess with Mama Bear or her people. But nonetheless, despite that, it is important for us to remember that we are a Christian church and that we gather together collectively to worship our God, the creator of heaven and earth. And we do that, and we try to do that in a very safe place. But we also realize that not everybody agrees. There's going to be some differences. And we want to be that place where you could express your difference. But in the right place. And as Aaron just mentioned, we can talk about anything and everything in the right time and in the right place. And so if you want to talk about something, you know what? Go out to the information tent, fill in the card, say, hey, I need to talk about A, B, or C. And we would be happy to have a conversation with you. Seeing how Ryan handled that stress, I'm going to send all those questions to Ryan. And he's probably outside with that grill, I think. So, that means I can rip on him as much as I want. But nonetheless, all that to say is it is an honor to be leading this team and you folks as we try to be God's people to the places that God has placed us. And so, again, thank you. Today we continue in our very biblically practical series that we are calling Joyfully Generous. And it's a series on stewardship. It's a series on our time, our talents, and our treasure, but we're leaning toward treasure because it's easier to talk about our time and our talents. And I think most people, don't think, even in Michigan, hey, what's your series on after Christmas and blah, blah, blah. And they all say, way to tackle that finance stuff. But when it comes to their church, When it comes to, let's talk about finances. How are you doing with that? Then everybody becomes very much more introverted. They don't want to talk about it. At least they want to talk about it with you. And we want to be that church where we can talk about it. Again, you're not going to probably, I hope you won't, yell out something this week. But if you need to talk about it with somebody, that's why we have life groups. Places where you know people and trust people. That if you have a question or a concern or you're trying to figure out, should I? Okay, this is not in my notes. We're going to be a tad bit longer, I'm sure, today. But, talking with people about finances leads to the subject of crypto. Is that what it's called? Did I say that right? Crypto investing. One of my buddies who's a big old financial whiz guy, he goes, you're either investing it or you're gambling it. Either way you want to look at that. Anyway, so there are conversations all over the place, and we need to be a place where we can have them. That you can talk with them, because I'm pretty sure none of you know it all when it comes to finances. And yet it's one of those things that we've got to address it and talk about it in safe places so that we can get a handle and be a good steward of what God has given each of us. Well, basically, that's the whole sermon. So let's just go have some burgers. No, not quite. But that's the point of it. And so today we're going to be looking at a great parable in the New Testament where Jesus is talking to the disciples. It's found in Matthew 25, 14 through 30. And it's really, again, about how to use the resources. Some of you may have heard this. You may know it. But it's something that we need to look into as we talk about what it means to be joyfully generous. So follow along with me either on the screen or on your devices, or grab a Bible that you can take home with you. They're not tagged electronically. We don't know where they're going, but you are welcome to take them. Let's take a look at Matthew 25, 14 through 30. Again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. To one he gave 5 bags of gold, to the other 2 bags, and to another 1 bag, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. The man who had received the 5 bags of gold went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 bags more. So also the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. But the man who had received 1 bag went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I have gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. The man with 2 bags of gold also came. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. See, and I gained 2 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Then the man who had received 1 bag of gold came. Master, he said, I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid, and I went out, hid your gold in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you. His master said, you wicked, lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. Well then, you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. So take the bag of gold from him and give it to the other one who had 10 bags. For whoever has been given more, for whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them and throw that worthless servant outside. People, those are pretty intense words in this parable. Throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Because he didn't invest what God had given him. Again, it is a parable that we can draw numerous take-home points from. No doubt, it is about stewardship and the handling of the resources that God has entrusted to us. It's also about preparing, for the Lord's return. If you take the reading in context about what else was going on and being taught about, it's be prepared for when God comes back. Again, the master of this story represents God, and the servants represent us, God's people. God has given us resources. Any of you heard this? Our time, our talents, and our treasure, and calls us to manage them wisely for his glory and for the good of others. It's not just about me. And at the heart of this story, I think we see 2 critical themes. One is responsibility, and the other is reward. And so again, you're encouraged, folks, whether it's in your life group, when you go back home, look up this passage and read it again and thinking about responsibility and reward. The servants who actively used their talents and invested wisely were commended, and they were rewarded. The servant who buried his talent out of fear or laziness, he was rebuked and punished. And we can learn several lessons from this passage. We can learn that joyful generosity is really our call to action for each and every one of us. Again, a key word is faithfulness. The first 2 servants were faithful with what they had been given. And they were entrusted with even more when God had seen how faithful they were. They didn't hoard their blessings. They took risks. They invested and worked hard to multiply what they had received. Their faithfulness resulted in joy, not just for them, but also for the master. This is where joyful generosity comes into play. This is why it's not just a sermon series on giving, but it's about joyful generosity and how really the more we give away, the more joyful we become. It's okay. So when I go to Michigan, I curtail some spending before I go, because I know when I go, Dad's going to make an extra trip or 2 to Costco. And it's not just to have a bonding experience with my daughter, it's to pay for that cart, or almost 2. Diapers, you all know. And then what's it called? The paper towel. These things fill up the cart, the cases of drinks, anyway. But I'm okay with that because I prepared, and it's like, let's go, sweetie. And you've all, parents, grandparents, Dad, you sure this is okay? It's like, you don't have $800 to pay for this. Let Dad get this for you. So anyway, but she is beyond grateful, and I am thankful I have one child. Bless the rest of you, Clements and everybody else with the 2, 3, 4, 5. Anyway, but no, I just think this plays out. The more I'm able to save and squirrel away for my trips to Michigan, I experience joy giving it away. That's all there is to it. And I am reminded of this. I just need to be prepared and to know that that's what's going to happen. And again, folks, that's where joyful generosity comes in. When we choose to live generously with what God has entrusted to us, we share in the joy ourselves of giving it, as well as in God's perspective, the joy that God has as we are a blessing to others. Again, it's not just about the giving of things, but it's also about being generous with our time and with our talents and with our heart as we open up our hearts. And many of you with friends who are in a horrible place right now because of the fires, just how we respond to people is Christ-like and generous. God is pleased, He is glorified, and we are using our gifts in a good way. Okay, again, the reward is clear in this. Come and share in your master's happiness. And I think sometimes we just don't even think about that. Sometimes I don't necessarily think about that, so I don't want to throw that on you. But generosity, when it does come from the heart, brings us into a very deeper connection with God's joy. It gives us a deeper purpose to know life isn't just about me surviving here in Michigan, not Michigan, well, it's freezing there. Here it's hotter than hot. It's not just surviving in California with high housing and high taxes, and I'm not going down that road. Well, I sort of did, but anyway. No, it is about centering in on God's generosity and knowing that I was created more than just to survive. You, every one of you, not to point fingers, have been created for a purpose, to be a blessing, to encourage somebody, to live outside of your own self. That is what God has created us to do, and that's what living joyfully, generously does for each and every one of us. I think one of the most critical takeaways from this passage is the recognition that really everything belongs to God. You are the managers of the things that we have. When I say everything, it means everything from our abilities to our time, to our different talents, to our financial resources. Everything belongs to God. It belongs to God, and we are entrusted to manage it. And for those of you with kids or grandkids, I've shared before the idea of mine. I think sometimes we think, I can play the piano. That's my gift. Or I can sing. That's my gift. Or whatever your talents may be. Well, it's mine. Well, no. God's given you the gift to bless somebody else and that He can receive the glory. But I remember once living here in California, I took something that was my daughter's, a piece of candy, and she was not happy. She said, Dad, that's mine. And I'm like, some of you I know are better parents than I was at that moment, better grandparents, and I responded with mine. What do you mean mine? Everything you have is because I've given it to you. Everything. A little tense in the house. And I know some of you, again, probably would have been much kinder in your response. Let's talk about this, sweetie. Is it really? No. I was adamant. It is nothing you have is because you've earned it. It's all because of me. And then I thought, that's how my life is. Nothing I have is because of me. Not a thing. It's all belongs to God and has been given to me to manage. And so how am I doing with that? I had to backpedal that comment to my daughter a little bit. Man, so it is with your possessions. Everything you have belongs to God. Absolutely everything. And even if you don't have a lot, what you have belongs to God. We are the managers, not the owners. And it's easy in our culture that we want to slip over to the owner's side of things. Because we feel, I went to school, I paid my debt, I've done this, I've done that. It is mine, and I can make the decisions. And reality is, folks, to be joyfully generous, it isn't ours. And let's just remember, all we have is a gift from God. When I was in Michigan, I visited a pastor buddy who 2 weeks before Christmas, they decided he needed a knee replacement. So he was rescheduling his whole Christmas holiday. Somebody else was preaching Christmas Eve. He watched it online. And I went to visit him. He's a lot younger he's younger than me. Had the knee replacement. And I know some of you have had knee replacements. And he was walking so gently. Every step was effort. And we take walking around pretty casually when we're feeling good. Well, we can breathe real easy when we're inside. But you don't want to be with those firefighters right now. You don't even want to go back if that was your home that was devastated. Because when things are going good, we take it for granted. We take our breath for granted. We take our health for granted. My buddy, he's replaced both knees. He's replaced a shoulder. His wife calls him her bionic man because everything's been replaced. And I say, dude, you got a gym at home. You got a gym at church. And that's why I don't go to a gym. You are in worse shape than I am, and so I'm going to take pride in the extra padding the Lord gives me if I ever do fall. All that to say is, friends, everything we do or say, again, for those of you who are married, don't take your spouses for granted. Work through the disagreements or arguments, depending on what scale they're on. With kids, yeah, they're going to give you a headache. But don't take them for granted. They are a gift. Go on the marriage retreat. I talked to 2 people back in Michigan, who went on it in Michigan. Young people. It was an incredible weekend. And so for those of you who have been pulling the anchor of the heaviness of life in your marriage, take the time, register now, and go. It will be a great investment in your marriage. But again, everything we have, our talents, our time, and our treasure, belongs to God. It is a gift to God that we often take for granted. And it's time just to pause as we begin this year, be thankful for everything that we do have, and evaluate, okay, am I the best steward of my energy, of my time, and of my talents? And so how do we do that? I knew you'd ask, so I got a few suggestions. Okay, very practical applications to the idea that God owns everything. And that's the first thing. We need to recognize and remember, like I just talked about, that everything is God's. Just because I got a couple master's degree, who cares? God's given me the resources, the brains, the endurance to make it through that. It all belongs to God. Because I'd like to landscape. Our gardener doesn't like it because I probably put my nose too much into the business going around here. But anyway, those are just gifts the Lord has given me. And they really come from God, and I'm just responsible to use them. And how am I going to use them to point people to Jesus? Again, that's not just our money belongs to God, but all of our life. And so, are you using your life for God's purpose? And again, it's not my notes, but the week before I accepted a job in Arizona, my wife was like, we are not going to the desert. Don't even respond. She was not a happy camper that we may need to move from Michigan. She was in a small group. They were reading through a study, and she realized, God didn't save me from cancer. She'd had it for 11 years, just to live in our comfortable home. She's an introvert. She liked everything planned. She had everything planned out. No, we are not moving. This is not in my plans. This is not right. This is not fair. But she realized, you know what? My life is God's. He didn't save me just to live in this house, but he saved me to live a life of significance. So she goes, she said, you can do this job. Apply for it. And I got it. I called her and I said, the church is a mess. I wasn't referring to this church. No, the church in Arizona was not in good shape. I go, let's take the house off the market and I can come home. And she's like, nope, God's called us there. I am not living a life of comfort. And let's go make a difference. That should be the attitude we all have. Sure, life is not fair. Some things should not happen. And indeed, many people are victims depending on where you are at in life. But just know that God owns everything. And our response is, okay, Lord, I don't like this. This isn't fair. But what am I going to do with my life to bring you glory? The second thing is to invest wisely. Sometimes you think using the word invest in church, should we even do that? But no, the servants in our story, again, which would be us, some of them invested well. They took the task seriously, and the one person did not. And I thought when I wrote this, maybe we need a sermon series. What are God's hot buttons? Because I think this was a hot button for Jesus. Doing nothing, hiding, not taking a risk, playing it safe. That is a hot button for our Savior because he said, throw him out. Let him experience the highest level of anxiety possible. And so let us remember that if it's financial, there's nothing wrong with making money. It's how you worship that money. Or does that money have control of you, or do you have control of that? So whether it's our resources, whether it's our talents, and even for those of you who it's difficult to get here, I understand. You can, again, I've said this, you can be our prayer warriors from home. Your gift to the church could be praying for us through this whole new year, that God will continue to move us in ways and in areas and in ministries that we can make a difference. And so, again, the question isn't, I only have $20 a month. That's no big deal. God doesn't really need my $20. What about your faithfulness? That $20 and what that is doing in your heart and in your, what we'd call your spiritual formation, becoming like Jesus, is just as significant as a person who drops in $1,000 a month. Your life, your faithfulness is making a difference no matter where you are in the spectrum of giving. We need to practice joyful generosity. And we know that really does come from a heart that is grateful, from a heart that is thankful to the Lord for all that's gone on. And that just doesn't happen overnight. Well, that shouldn't just happen through Thanksgiving as we try to zero in and to have more of a heart of gratitude. but it really needs to become a lifestyle of ours, that we practice joyful generosity wherever we can. And as we do that, people, we just become partners with God in his redemptive work in this world that we live in. Another one is we need to live with an eternal perspective. Again, this parable just reminds us that our actions today can have some eternal consequences. If you're just ignoring everybody, anything, living in your home, saying life has been rough, life isn't fair, I'm not an extrovert, I don't have the gift of evangelism, I don't have the gift of hospitality, I can't do anything, so I'm just going to sit here and die and wait for Jesus. That is the wrong perspective, and somebody needs to tell you that. And hopefully a family member has, and not your pastor. But the way that we manage our resources, everything we are, everything we do, where we give, what we don't give to, really goes back to Jesus. It's us living with the concept of eternity in mind, because we know, we've seen it this week. In an instant, everything you have can be gone. Everything. You've seen the images. Folks, there is absolutely nothing left of hundreds and hundreds of homes. Nothing. So we are not called just to build up and to have a great home, which again, there is nothing wrong with that, except if it becomes your life and what you worship, then that's not good. So we need to keep that eternal perspective, and knowing that the joy of heaven awaits for those of us who are faithful servants, those of you who are faithful with your time, your talents, and your treasure. And so let me bring it home one step further and talk specifically about New Life when it comes to the area of finances. Okay, here, let me take a look at this graph here. Just in case you're wondering, we have about 400 people that attend on a Sunday here. That's here, includes Indonesian ministry, students, so that's roughly about 400 people. Of that, roughly 317 are partners, are members here. People who have said, you know what, I'm planting the flag here. This is going to be my home church. And of that, 257 of those make donations. And it's really, any of you who have studied anything in your life, you've heard this statistic. 80% of our income is provided by 20% of our people. Now, the official name for that is the Pareto. Got that right? If I got 80%, 20. I've been hearing that forever. 80%, 20. 20% of our people are doing 80% of the work. Now, that's where we break statistics, people. We have as many people serving or volunteering as we have members. In fact, sometimes it's even over. So we got people who are serving here, many in our food distribution ministry, they don't even go here. I mean, we are blessed by those who are giving of their time and their talents. But again, I honestly, while, there's a company that runs all these figures for me, so I don't look at them all. He just gives me the bottom line. He goes, Juno, you are what most churches are, 20-80, 20% of the people giving 80% of the budget. And friends, I don't want to be typical. I love it when people say, I've been to New Life, and that's not like any other church I've been at. It's like, yes. We talk about Jesus, but we're going to do some things a little differently. And my prayer is that our giving will be different, that we'll be able to, over time, adjust that to it's not just 20% of the people are giving 80% of the budget, but let's just slowly raise that as God provides for you. And it's because of your giving, and Ryan talked about it last week. It's the people who sacrificially gave for 90 years ago that put us into this place. It's the people who cashed in their savings, who took out, not a second mortgage, but cashed in some of their retirement funds so that this place could be built and rebuilt 12 years ago to where we're at. It just doesn't mysteriously happen. We don't have a money tree in the prayer garden. We'd probably have a lot more people praying if we did. No, it happens because people like you that give. People gone well above tipping, again, like Ryan said. See, I listened to the sermon. Tipping God. We have to move beyond I'll just, whatever I got left, I'll just throw it in. I'll just give God a tip. And some of you, you're like, do I give 17%? Do I give 18, 23? Is 25 too much to give? And you know those who are generous, when you're they're just like, they're tipping generously. We need to be generous givers for our church. For us to continue to be new life for the city and far beyond, we need to surpass that giving. One of our members here shared this with me. When it comes to giving and, why do you give? They said, I remember my dad every Sunday morning would write a check, so they're old. Most people don't write checks, but write a check to the church and often would explain why it was important to give back to God what we were entrusted with. Tithing was very important. Tithing means giving 10% to God. When I had my own family, we continued with that tradition and made sure our kids saw and understood what we were doing. God has blessed us, and we've been able to contribute over and above the tithe to church and others. So again, friends, I don't want to be a typical church. They're all over the place. Let's just face it. I want to be known as the church that's generous, that's willing to step into areas that probably maybe many churches don't. I want to be able to love people as God would love them. And that happens as you are a generous giver, that you are a joyful, generous giver with what God has given you. And again, here at New Life, the average gift is $222, which again, that is just information. That's taken all the money that comes in and divided by all the people that have given. And you need to understand that represents somebody's life. And if you're at the end where you're a $20 giver, you need to hear that your life is still of value and still important. And if you're at the other end, where I have people that say, here, Juno, here's $5,000. You and the board can do whatever you want with it. It's like, hallelujah, thank you. Then we can get something fixed around here. God uses everybody. Your dedication to be here on a Sunday, to join us on a Sunday, to pray for us as a church and as God's people to influence the world in which He gives us. I just wanted to make sure you understand that we're not evaluating people's value based on what they give, but that we want to challenge you to be all that you can be in your time, your talent, and your treasures. And as we do that, folks, as we collectively, people have gifts that some of us will never have. But together, in our diversity and in our gifts, we can continue to make a huge difference in this community and in our world. And we will do that as we are joyfully generous with all that God has given us. God's people said, amen.